Now, government is imposing anti-dumping duties on chicken imports from Brazil and 4 European Union countries, namely Denmark, Ireland, Poland and Spain. Now, the duties will remain in effect up until the 14th of June next year. The move was welcomed by local poultry industry players who believe the continued high chicken imports continue to affect its performance. Joining me now is SA Poultry Association's Izaak Breitenbach. A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time. What's your take on this decision?
Well, this is quite a big one for us. If we look at the quantum of the duty imposed, that is significant for our industry. What is also significant is that all 5 countries, Izaak, found dumping. And the importers and various exporters from Europe and or Brazil opposed this implementation of the anti-dumping duty and tried to convince Izaak that there is no dumping. And significant amount of dumping were found. Now, dumping is not good for any country. It destroys jobs, it destroys economic growth. In this particular case, the poultry, not only the poultry industry, but also the maize and the soya industries. So it's a very significant anti-dumping duty that was announced.
Chicken imports have become a major threat to the country's poultry industry. Exactly how severe is this problem?
The problem is quite severe. If we look at the quantum of the anti-dumping duty, which is a measure of at what price the product is imported. Now, the 265% anti-dumping duty in the case of Brazil means that product is sent to South Africa at a 265% lower price than what they sell it to their own consumers in Brazil. Now, when you see that, it doesn't make economic sense whatsoever. And what we've also seen is that that particular benefit was not given through to the consumer. So it is material in our case. We have planned to grow this industry in terms of our master plan or industry growth plan. And part of that is to eliminate only the unfair trade component, which is dumping, and the illegal trade component, which is under declaration of product. And this is certainly a big problem if we look at what Izaak found.
Looking at the numbers and the figures when it comes to this process, I mean, exactly how far and how deep are we as a country, and what impact does that then have on the economy and people not being able to access jobs in South Africa from the poultry industry?
We've done a study to look at what the impact is on the industry. This is the second largest industry in agriculture. The government has looked at this industry, which is globally competitive. We're the 6th most cost-effective producer of chicken meat in the world. And yet we are suffering, and we are not growing, and we are not investing. And 30% of all poultry consumed currently would be imported poultry. Now that tells us something is wrong in this value chain. So what we've done is we've determined that 6.5 billion rand leaves this industry, the country, every year in the way of imports. That money is then spent in developing farms and industries in Brazil and America and the European Union, as we have found. If we could invest that money in South Africa today, we can create 15,000 additional jobs. And that will have a material impact on this country and its economy, if we just look at the unemployment rate that we have.
I mean, that's one positive, but what does this now essentially mean for the consumer? Doesn't it mean that the struggling South African consumer will then have to fork out a little bit more for poultry?
Only about 30% of total poultry meat consumed would be imported poultry. And that duty will be applied to the imported poultry meat. If we look at the 70%, there is no impact on the 70% of local production that we have. I think what one needs to say to the consumer is that this industry for 90 years have supplied the consumer with incredibly cost-competitive chicken. And we will carry on doing that. If we look at the competitiveness of this industry, you cannot buy product at this price in America, Brazil, or in the European Union at present. So in terms of what we offer the consumer is a very cost competitive product, and we will endeavor to do so in future. I think what we try to achieve in terms of the growth plan or the master plan would be to produce more chicken locally. And that gives us economies of scale. And that is one of the aspects that put a ceiling on the prices of any product if we achieve economies of scale. And that's what we would like to do. We would like to still be the best cost-effective supplier of chicken meat to the consumer.
Now, in recognizing the unfair trade, what impact did that then have on a government imposing tariffs within the industry?
The government imposed a tariff on the industry to take the unfair trade component away or to mitigate that. So in essence, what it means, in a crude way, it means that the prices will increase to the level of prices that we experience within South Africa. And that will give companies in South Africa the ability to make enough profit to invest. And we've invested 1.5 billion in the past year in the total poultry industry. Local chicken eat local maize and local soya. So when we invest, when we grow the poultry industry in South Africa, with a proviso that we need to remain cost competitive, we actually create consumption of grain, of maize and soya, of packaging, of retail. There is a whole value chain that benefits from this action that the government has taken. And we support that. And we work with government to achieve the objective in the master plan or growth plan that we agreed with government.
Does the industry in South Africa have the sufficient skill set to now take on these additions? I mean, is there the sufficient opportunities for also young people to grow within the poultry industry as a result of this move? I mean, you speak about how it will create more jobs in the country, but can it create more jobs and also industry experts at the same time?
Absolutely, it will. South Africa has modeled its production systems basically on the European model. So if you walk into an abattoir or a poultry facility in Europe or in South Africa, you will not see any difference in that. What is very important here is that we've got very strict and well negotiated and agreed timelines for developing local people, for putting in place transformation in the industry. And this additional expansion actually gives us that room to maneuver. We've made great progress in terms of transformation or expanding the skill set to new members of the poultry community. We have established 13 contract growers in the last year or year and a half. That sounds trivial. Each of these farms is worth 45 million rand in terms of asset value. So that is major contributions. We've created in the region of 1,365 jobs already, and this process will not stop here. This process will continue because we've got the fundamentals right in terms of the macro environment, that we don't need to compete with unfair trade, which is really difficult. No poultry company in the world can compete with unfair trade. We can compete with Brazil, America, the European Union on a fair trade basis, and we don't need any protection. We're competitive.
And in analyzing the model, what does this additional expansion then mean for South Africa's export capacity?
We've absolutely targeted exports. An investment took place in the last 2 years at least 5 companies where cooking facilities were established. And that is to produce partially cooked and fully cooked products that we already consume in South Africa, and that's widely consumed overseas. So we are in the process of putting the structures behind us in place to facilitate the exports. If we talk about exports, there are very specific areas that we target. The first one is the Middle East. One of our companies already export to the Middle East. That market is open for us. We have issues with highly pathogenic avian influenza that is limiting our exports to the Middle East at the moment, and specifically the UAE. Then secondly, we target the European Union. The European Union consumes an awful amount of cooked or partially cooked breast meat, and that would be the market that we will target with exports. And what the tariffs has done for us is to fix the problem at home, to give us the opportunity to focus on exports.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. Let's leave it there for now. Our discussion with the SA Poultry Association's Izaak Breitenbach, speaking about the provisional anti-dumping duties imposed on chicken imports.